Okay, fabulous. Well, welcome everybody to this fifth seminar in the series. I think we're doing really well so far. The rain's just started pouring down here in the UK, but I hope it's sunny and dry wherever you are. If you don't know, most of you do, I'm sure, but my name's Nick Spencer. I'm at Northumbria University and I'll be hosting this Design Matters seminar. I saw an interesting article in the news fairly recently, and it was talking about the role of technology, and in particular, it was questioning whether we were really using technology or leveraging technology in the way we might to really help the most vulnerable. And the article was pointing out that one of the things that COVID has highlighted lots of different things for us, but one of the things that COVID has highlighted was that those that are digitally enabled and digitally and technology connected were able to kind of pivot to working from home, to launching different enterprises, to connecting with the world quite easily. But those that have issues of digital poverty, actually their difficulties were exacerbated. And it just made me think about technology-led innovation and whether and how often those innovations are really targeted at the most vulnerable, and what impact digital poverty has on social innovation more broadly. And I thought that was a really interesting article, and I'd be interested as this seminar progresses and we move into the discussion section to get your reflections on the role of technology in support of social innovation, in particular when that comes to supporting the most vulnerable. And I thought that article helped set up our speaker today, which is looking at kind of technology-led innovation and innovation in extreme environments. So, as you know, this seminar is all about cake. So it's knowledge exchange, collaboration, and knowledge exchange, and it's a monthly meetup that aims to promote our understanding of design-led approaches to social innovation and social entrepreneurship. You'll all be aware by now, but I do a screen recording of this session, and I'll put the recording up on YouTube, and all 4 of the previous seminars you can access and watch at any point. This really does take a community effort, and I'm always grateful for contributions, whether they be in the chat, whether they be in the discussion, and in particular to our speakers that engage during and contribute to the seminars. But there are a whole range of different ways that you can engage to this kind of work. The easiest one is just ask a question. Some of us are very familiar with design and design thinking, some less so. You can email me if you just want to put a question directly to me, or there is a document that you can post questions in, and if I receive questions, I'll aim to respond to them in the next seminar session. Share interesting stuff, anything that you come across that's about kind of interesting or creative approaches to social entrepreneurship or social innovation. Again, there's a document that you can just drop links into or share content. It'd be really brilliant just to see and access some of the stuff that you're coming across. You can take the stage. So again, this seminar series is a platform for you, for this community to have a voice and to share some of their work. And I'd be delighted if people are interested in presenting some of the things that they're involved with, I'd very happily give you some time and a stage to do that here in this seminar. You can get some individual attention. So if you're interested in thinking about how design thinking might enhance your own kind of academic professional context, again, just get in touch with me and we can set something up where we can really explore how design thinking might enhance some of the work that you do in your institution and in your research. Be involved in a live project. So at the moment, I'm building a kind of a constellation of organizations, and we'll be forming that as a critical peer group that will be active in June and July. We'll be stimulating that constellation of organizations with design thinking and design things. And again, if you're interested in getting involved and seeing a live design-led project, get in touch with me. There'll be ways to contribute and engage and see and witness some of that work as it unfolds. And we really must capitalize on this network and the expertise that's part of this action. Some of this is ongoing, and I certainly intend, after the summer exploration, this experiment in this constellation of organizations, to develop a funding bid. And it'd be really interesting just to see who's interested in working with me on that. So anyway, on to the main event, and I'd like to introduce our main speaker for this morning, Dr. Mikulinsky. You can correct me because I know I've pronounced your name wrong, and I'll give you every opportunity, Romy, just to introduce and correct me. But Romy is involved in some really interesting work, and it's fantastic that she's agreed to share some of that with us. So I'll hand over control, and you can open up your slides and introduce yourself and take it from there.
All right. So thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. Nick and I have been in touch. I can say that I've also learned a lot from him and from being in touch with him. So I'm really feel privileged to have known you, Nick. Having said that, I know we are recorded, and since we usually use Zoom and not Meets, and this is a technology-driven session, this may be really embarrassing for me because I'm not sure that I'm an expert on. Let me say I'm not an expert on.
I can guide you. I can guide you through it. Screen. I can guide you through it. There should be a little icon that is a rectangular box with an arrow in it. That's a share tray. So if you click that then should give you a range of options of screen share or sharing a particular browser window or something of that nature.
I see. Okay, so maybe I have too many windows, but let's see. Hold on, I apologize. I will introduce myself in a minute. Good. Can you?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, perfect. We can see and hear that wonderfully.
All right. So let me just present. Do you see a full screen now?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Perfect.
Good. So hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you for bearing this embarrassment, technological, unled embarrassment. I am Dr. Romy Mikulinsky. I'm the head of the graduate program in industrial design, and I have a PhD in English literature. So one of the first questions that many people ask me is, how did you become a head of an industrial design department? And I think that the short question has to do with the fact that both industry and the world of design have immensely changed in the last decade or so. So I think that if we consider the human race as a race that designs its own tools, design its environment, and if we think about the shifts that industry has gone through in the last years, in the last 50 years or even more, we can understand that human beings have a lot of responsibility in the way that they've engaged with each other, engaged with their environment, and of course shaped their tools that have shaped themselves as well. So what you actually see here is the historical Bezalel campus at the center of Jerusalem, and on my right, the current campus that Bezalel inhabits. Actually, both buildings are still in use. People no longer dress like this with those European very light cotton made suits, but you can still see some people dressed in this manner, the more local manner. But this is only part of the heritage that Bezalel Academy has. And before I will move to talk about the future and a little bit about the past, I would like also to tell you that if you look on the right image, you can see the Dead Sea here on my right. And on the other side of this building, this very ugly building, if I may, there is a neighborhood that belongs to Eastern Jerusalem, an Arab neighborhood, and past it you can see the wall. And this is no secret that we live in conflict, that Israel and specifically Jerusalem is a very difficult city to work with. But I think those concepts of both carrying the heritage of the place and building a new future and trying to come together with those complicated circumstances is what makes this academy so unique in its approach, and also in the freedom that it gives us. So I would like to show you a little bit more of what we're doing, and also describe what the program I'm heading is specializing in, focusing on design research, innovation through design, and technology-led innovation that also, I think, for us and for me, all of them have a lot of social responsibility. So indeed, we do have 5 campuses. I teach in this campus, which is, it used to be a lepers colony built around 1887, I think. And it's a very unique campus because it used to be a hospital. So also the classrooms are somewhat challenging. And today it is also a media and technology center. So Bezalel graduate degrees are located over there, but we have 2 more campuses. And as you can see, I will briefly tell you about Bezalel and the different departments. So the academy was established before the country of Israel was founded. Bezalel was established in 1906. We have 5 different campuses. I've already shown you 3. We have about 2,500, maybe 2,700 students, and more than 500, maybe 600 faculty members. We take pride in bringing both future and tradition together, and in this unique combination of architecture, art, and design. And because this academy taught most of the designers, artists, architects in Israel, a lot of the landscape, we have a great contribution to the landscape in Israel, both cultural and physical. So there are 9 undergrads degrees: architecture, ceramics and glass, design, fine art, industrial design, jewelry and fashion, photography, screen-based arts, visual communication. And also now a new degree, Bachelor of Arts degree in cultural studies. And we have 5 graduate degrees: fine art, the department that I lead, industrial design, policy and theories of the art, urban design, visual communications. And I have to say that the students come from all over Israel. Many of them in the last years are also arriving from Eastern Jerusalem, and there are more and more students that Arab is their first language, and also exchange students. But Bezalel is changing and is currently building a new campus downtown in Jerusalem. And whereas you've seen it is located, the main campus today is located on Scopus Mountain by the Hebrew University main campus. Now we're moving downtown, and not only we're moving downtown, we're going to have glass see-through walls, and this is a beautiful building that is being built by and designed by Sana, which is a Japanese architecture firm. And this is quite foreign for Jerusalem, that is becoming more and more radical, more and more segregated, and unfortunately also more and more religious. And it's the city with the most extremes. So I'm not sure how, sorry, 1 minute. I'm not sure how the bypassers in Jerusalem will react to very secular and also groundbreaking art and design, given the extremity of the population in Jerusalem, but it is going to be an interesting thing to find out. All right, so maybe just one last thing about the Academy is that we take our responsibility very seriously, and we also think of ourselves not only as artist-run or design-run academy, but we consider ourselves those that are leading the discussion on the relation between the creative industries, the creative economy, and also politics, because we do think that it is impossible to turn our backs to all those situations that are taking place in this beautiful and crazy country. And artists, designers, architects have a very important role to play in building the future, and also in representing the ideology that I hope that we're promoting. So I will talk today about 2 different projects that my program is running. The first one is actually very, very local. It takes place in the desert, and the other one is a collaboration with the prestigious University of Tokyo. Both of them consider technology, both of them consider responsibility, and both of them take into consideration social aspects. So I'll start with a concept that a colleague of mine has invented, and I'm proud to take part in further developing it. It's called Life in Extreme Condition Seminar, and it is usually carried out in collaboration with Dead Sea and Arava R&D Center. Arava is one of the, is part of the desert. The south of Israel is a desert. So I would like to tell you about a seminar that took place about 2 years ago in Mitzpe Ramon Crater in the desert, with collaboration with a group of architects and with the scientists of the Arava and Dead Sea R&D Center. Okay, so we can now start. First of all, maybe it is important to say that the program that I lead has 3 different tracks. One of them is design and technology, the other is design management and innovation, and the third is called About Design. It is the most formalistic one and usually creates objects and exhibitions, where the other 2 are more market-facing, industry-facing. And it is interesting because we'd like to bring all of those students and background together into fruition and into a cross-pollination. And the seminar's goal is, first of all, an entry to an unknown field and hackathon-like process. It is only 4 days, and it entailed very quick prototyping. And given the richness and variety of backgrounds in the program, we bring both students and lecturers from several disciplines, and we mix the tracks. So the students have to talk together, have to work together, and to create a mutual language. So the seminar structure usually is 4 days. We take the entire first year of students to the desert, as you can see here. About 50 students, a dozen of lecturers, and several local experts, and we divide them into 6 groups. This particular seminars, we had 4 themes, And the fact that we take them to an isolated work environment is also because most of the students in the program, they are part-time students. That means that they are working and they need to be available to their jobs and to phone calls from work. And the fact that we take them to the desert means that they cannot run away. They cannot be available to work or go back to their families, and they stay with us in the field for 4 days. And we also introduce them both to researchers and experts, and we encourage them to go and explore and ask questions of the locals, be they agriculture experts or people that teach or just live in those areas. And we also have multidisciplinary mentorship. That is, there are several mentors coming from 3 tracks, and they teach together in teams of 2 in those multidisciplinary teams. So the students from the technology track learn a bit more methodologies of design research arriving from the different tracks. So there's a lot of richness and cross-pollination built in. So those unique methodologies that we teach, and Nick mentioned earlier, all kind of design methodologies and ideation, we do them very quickly. So we teach them throughout the program, both creative research and human-centered design research that has to do more with anthropology. We also teach them design thinking, and we constantly prototype. That is that without really examining and validating one's ideas and one genius inventions, we don't know if they work. So what you see here is all kind of concepts that are being tested, and a student here is sketching her ideas that will be prototyped outside the classroom in a few minutes. And the combination of material research, ideation, prototyping has to take place in 3 days, and it works like magic. So as I mentioned, we have different groups of experts. In this particular seminar, we had a meeting of different fields. We had the designers that come from all disciplines of design. We have visual communication experts and an architect and also a textile expert. And then we have the scientists that come from the center, the research center there in the Arava. This is Dr. Oded Kenan. He's one of our best partners in this adventure. And at the front of the picture, you see 2 architects that come from an organization called DMARS that you will soon see what they're doing. So what it is that we're actually doing there, what do we teach them? So first of all, we teach them to identify a real need, and we do that with design thinking methodologies. We learn them to recognize these different design business opportunities. That is, the ideas they come with can become little companies, products, even startups later. We do that with ideation and conceptualization, and of course, practicing them makes you an expert. And we also turn the ideas into sustainable businesses. At least we teach them to do that, not necessarily in the seminar, but throughout the program, the 2 years program. And they constantly prototype and they do market validation, but not always market validation. We can also teach them different kinds of validations of needs. That is, when we take them to the seminar for 3 days, it doesn't matter if their idea will have market validation. We'd like them to have a good idea that could later become someone else's business plan or someone else's product or service. So going back to the desert, we try to give them this hackathon-like process with a fast entry to the field, and they collaborate with research. They identify the needs, opportunities, and then they move on to a need-centered design. So as the newcomers to the area that they don't know, because most of the students don't come from the desert, they don't live in the south of Israel, they have to validate their ideas and to try to find if they are usable, if they're solving something, if they're useful to anyone. And this is why in the beginning they have to work together in teams and come up with many ideas, some of them really bad ideas, And then they move on to asking the people around them, the experts we introduce them to, and also the locals, if their ideas are really need-based, if there is someone that finds the question that they're working on valid and relevant. And I'm now moving to the specifics and to the themes that the students try to work with. So we had 4 themes and 6 groups in this seminar. One of them had to do with space colonialism. How would life look like when we can move away from Earth and inhabit new planets? And the other had to do with ecotourism and possibly with the opportunity to travel space in an ecological way. 2 other teams worked on habitat and how life could look in a place that is not Earth. And the last team that I mentored had to do with collaboration between Martians and Earthlings, but we talk about humans. So how the communication procedures could work when humanity would collaborate Mars. Now, usually the collaborations we do in these extreme life conditions are not dedicated to speculative design. And I have to say that colonization to Mars and traveling to the moon have populated the news recently. But what we try to do is to work with the field. And one of the interesting things about the Ramon crater is that it looks a little bit like Mars. And this is why the DMARS space, it is called an analog station. It's a research center for analog space discovery is based over there. Because the conditions, of course, they do not look like, they're very different from Mars. The gravitation is Earth-based, but the materials we have there, the colors, they're very evocative of Mars. And what we did was to introduce our students to experts, both from architecture that could give them feedback on how livable habitats can look like, and also to assist them in understanding the physical condition. And those 4 teams worked very beautifully in creating different ideas. I have to say, we didn't work on market validation. We didn't look into the usability of those concepts because unlike agriculture and sustainability seminars, this one had to do with life that we can only imagine right now. So I will tell you about 2 projects and, just 1 project. And I will explain a bit more about the collaboration with the DMARS architects. So this project had to do with communication between astronauts when they're doing their spacewalks, when they're moving outside of the DMARS habitat or the spaceship that they work in. So we had a very interesting team of 2 artists and 1 musician and 3 designers. One of them is an architect, another is an industrial designer, and then 1 visual designer. And the team worked together about the communication. And I'm sorry that this is in Hebrew, but I will translate. So what they tried to do was to create a communication system between 2 astronauts that leave the vehicle. That is, they're outside of their spaceship and they're trying to do an experiment, a scientific experiment, and maybe also test new equipment or even fix different systems like satellites or the spaceship systems. And we also try to measure how much time they're doing this. So this is based on a 5 to 8 hours slot. And we have consulted with several space experts and also with 1 astrobiologist that has a lot of experience about NASA and scientific experiment in space. So what the students were interested in was not only the functionality, but also the emotional monitoring of the astronauts. And what they considered as an opportunity was the fact that the astronauts are constantly monitored to find different parameters. And as we see more and more effective computing entering the scene, the students decided that this could be an opportunity to use to deploy effective computing that measures emotional reactions to improve the interconnection between those two astronauts, to ensure that communication is better. So they created a system entitled Space Buddy. That means your friend in space, and it is an add-on to the helmet that is meant to create a better communication and also a human communication throughout spacewalking. So what they did here is to focus on body movement. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you still see my screen?
Yep.
And the PowerPoint presentation? Good. So they focused on both body movement, gestures, but also facial expressions that enable us to understand different emotional conditions, and of course to create empathy, which is one of designers' most useful tools. So the systems create a better cognition, a better sensual understanding, and also registers both physical and emotional situation of the astronaut partner. And what the students actually did was a very quick prototype. I hope this will work because it's supposed to be a video. No. Okay, so the video won't start, so I'm skipping it. But they created a very nice prototype that ensures the mental condition and the physical condition of the astronaut, but by also integrating tradition. And this is evocative of very ancient Jewish traditional artworks. And they also deployed newer systems of design to create this kind of communication between the two astronauts. So they suggested that an inner camera will be in place, and they will have different expressions that are captured to create a system that the other astronaut can understand. And this blue dot, this blue circle here, expresses well-being. So the parameters that they've created have to do with both the facial expressions that may report unease or stress, but also relief, but also on different parameters like the body pulse or blood pressure, the body heat, but also saturation and the battery quality, so the battery life and the quality of the connection. So this blue dot, this blue circle is compiled, and of course they haven't created this entire system, but they've invented a design system that projects the overall well-being of the astronaut, but it calculates the entire parameters and created active expression meters. So they also did a prototype that I could have show you earlier if this would have worked, but they were very concerned with the fact that this should also be evocative of Earth, and this is why they also made this jewelry piece, but would also broadcast something more, I would call it high-tech, more advanced, and also in the aesthetics that we're more familiar today of smart objects. So we do have a little bit of their inspiration board, and given the fact that they were 7 students coming from varied backgrounds, they could bring many different inspirations. And this is the team testing the astronaut wear that the DMARS team had available for them. So I think it will be best if I will have time for answers at the end, because I have another presentation that I would like to show you that is a more elaborate research, and I also think that is a more standard design research than the extreme conditions. Do you see my presentation full screen? Good. All right, so this is a future mobility project that a team of designers from Bezalel Academy, from my department, and also technology researchers and design researchers from the University of Tokyo have been working on in the past year and a half, I think. And it has to do with autonomous transportation. So keep in mind this Navia bus, it's an autonomous bus, and what you see here is the Kashiwa campus of Tokyo University. And our partners in this project are the Design Lab in the Tokyo University. That is actually a group of lecturers and graduates of the RCA and Imperial College in London that have moved to Japan, to Tokyo, to open a design-led initiative within the Institute of Industrial Science at the University of Tokyo. And one of those designers or design researchers is also a graduate of Bezalel Academy, this guy, Yuri Klebanov, and some of our students and lecturers have traveled to Japan last year in January. And they worked with a team of also industrial scientists and engineers. And after I will tell you, I will tell you now about also not only the trip that they've made for 10 days in, but also about the progress of this project. Okay, so I'll start with a quote about technological progress. We don't think people are thinking about humans in the loop at all right now. Even if we solve autonomous cars, the bigger problem is really humans. Humans are going to mess everything up, and you have to really design for human using self-driving cars and how they're going to understand things around them. So I think that this is a very important thing to keep in mind. Humans are going to mess things up, to mess everything up. And if you're a designer, you have to take that into consideration. If you don't look at your users, at humans using your beautiful prototypes, you don't know if they're really useful. You don't know if they're working. And you also need to understand that design is an iterative process. You may design something, you may give it to your user, then it will come back to you as something completely different. So we're talking here about the near future, about tomorrow, actually, and about people using autonomous vehicles. And what the students, the designers, tried to do over there was to create human-centered design that would ease the transition to a driverless car ecosystem. And what they tried to focus on was a hybrid mobility ecosystem. And the real focus point was a shared vehicle, a shared autonomous vehicle, public transportation. Whereas most industry is looking at the private vehicles, I think it is really important for design schools to consider not only the people that can afford such expensive robots, because this is what those autonomous vehicles are, but also the entire ecosystem. Pedestrians that are not paying for the services, other car drivers, other micromobility users that will be sharing the roads with those autonomous vehicles, but also the AV passengers that may or may not have a driving license. And the question of having a driving license may not be relevant in a few years' time. So what this team tried to do in a 10 days very intense workshop in Tokyo was to understand what is available, what kind of technologies are available today. So first of all, they onboarded on a level 3 autonomous bus with a driver, a human driver, but what they've noticed is, of course, that the driver is not really driving. He's holding the wheel, But throughout the drive, his main role over there was to communicate with the passengers. And this bus is traveling to the distant campus. This is not the main campus. And in the campus, they have the Industrial Science Institute, different faculty interfaces and resources. That is, they have a Navia bus, they have rails, they have big workshops, they have what you see here is a train station, and they have many, many engineers there working on different aspects that have to do with intelligent transportation systems. So our students and lecturers have interviewed different researchers, and they've also used the simulator over here to understand how driving and also traveling in autonomous vehicles is measured today. And they learned a lot about how scientists approach this. And then they did all kind of ideation processes to find the questions that they want to focus on. And after the ideation processes, they started to prototype. And they did a little bit of modeling in Arduino, and I will show you the results in a minute. But I think it is really important to understand that once you have a haptic experience, once you have an object, it is easier to understand and to validate the usefulness and also the contribution of what it is that you're trying to design for the users. So after 10 intense days of research, the team presented to the mobility cluster professors, and they were quite impressed, luckily for us. So they came up with two concepts for new interactions between humans and autonomous vehicles for this new kind of interaction, and they focused on the absence of the bus driver. That means that in a new kind of transportation, there will be no human bus driver. And I think that this means many different things that we cannot imagine right now, but they try to deal to focus on communication both inside the vehicle and outside the vehicle. And they did this very fast. Okay, this was only a 10 days workshop. So what you see here is different sketches trying to explain different kind of communication. In the absence of a bus driver, how will the passenger know where he or she are traveling? How many stops are there? And how can the vehicle also signal to the passenger that they're safely onboarded? So what you see here are sketches of two inventions. One of them is floor, that is a platform for interaction, and another one is a pole, and both of them have been further developed. So this is before COVID. Today we know that there could be other uses for these kind of shapes, but they try to create a sense of communication, of even bondage between the different passengers, because they try to fight estrangement. So holding this pole signals to you if you're onboarded in a safe manner, if you're standing in a stable way, and also the bus greets you farewell. So this is the beginning of a communication system that the team tried to create. So this is a mock-up, and this is a way of communication that the team tried to create. This is what happens when you hold the pole. Mm-hmm. It signals to you that you've been safely onboarded, and there is a certain pattern of ripples that we have elaborated after the leave. And here you see the two designers, then students, now lecturers, holding the pole, and you can see those ripples signaling that they're holding safely and they can move on. So We don't need to see this one again. And finally, I will show you very quickly the bus actually departing, saying farewell to one of the passengers. So we have a new language signaling that you're safely onboarded using the floor, using the pole, and then again a way to signal that you're safe and that you're standing in a stable manner. But also there is a nice kind of greeting that the bus gives to its passengers. And I think that this one's one of the first and important understanding of the students of the design team, that they realized that the bus could actually be a platform, that they don't want necessarily the passengers to hold another platform for communication, not a cell phone and not a beeper. So now I would like to show you the low and high res prototypes. So the beginning was sketching, and they tried to think about how this pole would behave. This was mainly for getting a grip of the idea. The second part was digital. It's this GIF that I showed you earlier. It bloats and then it goes back to its usual size. And the next step was searching for formal and visual inspiration, and they started creating little models that can behave in a manner that they want. And they also did all kind of role playing, as you've seen earlier in the videos. How could two people hold on to this pole? How would it interact? But they didn't have time to develop the technology in 10 days. But they were very interested in sketching the interaction and getting an understanding of how passengers may respond to this new idea. So this is the prototype that they presented. It is LED. It's not really working, but it is something that could be developed later to check different interfaces and behavior. And the second thing that they tried to imagine, the second communication pattern, was with other road users. How might a driverless bus communicate with its surrounding? And here they thought that the bus could communicate, again, could be the platform, by bloating, again, by creating a comment, a physical expression to the bicycle rider. You're too close. Why don't you move away? And here it signals to the passenger, it is safe for you to onboard. You see those lights moving and the bus going down. They didn't try to come up with a new bus. They didn't try to come up with a new vehicle. This is not about the design of new vehicles, but a design of communication patterns. And the last example has to do with the passenger, the passenger that is walking by. He or she are not interested in onboarding the bus, but they need to understand that it is safe to pass. So there's also the bus arriving, slowing down, and signaling to the passenger that it is safe to cross. And they've also made another nice physical prototype that could show how the bus can bloat or react to using different LEDs and sensors. And of course, this could be a layer on top of the bus that reacts to different users. And here's both the pole and the bloating bus. So this was an example of how design can come up from an idea to sketches, to models, and then move on to actual prototypes that people can interact with. So I don't think I have time to explain about product development or service development and how we moved forward. So
you have time. It's okay.
Oh, I do?
Yeah. It's fine.
Okay. So I think you all remembered what happened in late January, the beginning of February last year. And as the team started going back from Japan, there was the beginning of anxiety in Asia, and then in the US, in Europe, and then in Israel. In March, we started experiencing those lockdowns, and it was impossible to travel and actually even to work in physical manners. So we started working remote, and to better define what is lost, what we need to capture, and how we can further answer now that we have time to work not in a 10 days hackathon, but there was more in-depth work into what this interaction manners can answer. So maybe the first research question that we tried to answer had to do with what is lost in the transition to driverless vehicles in the absence of a human driver. So first of all, the sense of familiarity or even orientation. You're on board on a bus, you don't know where it's going. You don't know when you'll get there. You have no one to ask. It's a system. It's no longer a person that is operating the bus. If something goes wrong, you don't know what to do, who to ask. And even if you have an app, you're not sure that it's really operating properly or understands, or even if there's a human respondent around you. So also we try to anticipate the vehicle's behavior, that human can no longer understand how the vehicle is operating, because its manner of operation is based on AI. It's no longer human-operated machines. So it calculates different factors. It responds in different ways, and the designers should translate that. Then there's also the sense of authority that is lost inside the vehicle. Something goes wrong. Who do you ask? Who do you turn to if you're not sure? And we realize that it's not only about safety, it is about trust. And I think that the answer, the questions of trust calibration are very important now. And trust is something that we began to research more in depth. But I will focus now on communication that, of course, has to do with trust building. But I will be very happy to elaborate on trust and designers and trust later. So again, the team tried to conceptualize new forms of communication, which are effective, human-centered, and universal. And we have this naive intent of humanizing technology, or at least creating a better communication system that the technology could be more humane, not just to humanize it, but to create a more welcoming, more assuring environment for the passengers. And we kept thinking about this Navia bus that is also available to us in Tel Aviv. And the team in Tokyo worked with our designers here, and they created a system of communication. And these were the questions that they tried to answer about the communication between the autonomous vehicle and the passengers. So, one, how can we humanize the way a driverless vehicle interacts with its passengers? How will I know as a passenger the AV acknowledged my presence, be it inside the vehicle or outside the vehicle? And of course, how can we create a sense of trust with a public vehicle that has no driver? And the vehicle itself, as I explained later, can be a platform, can play a part in the communication between passengers and the driverless vehicle. And we decided to move on and play with the floor as an instrument for expression, for communication, and to create both data visualization, visual feedback, and haptic feedback. So of course the poll had more to do with the haptic feedback, but now we're focusing on the floor and its communication patterns. And we're still interested in creating a language that would be universal. We will test it in both Japan and Israel, and that will be very clear in its data visualization. And this is what we're actually going to test. So a bit more from the team's inspiration board. So you see here the ripple that the team took as inspiration. And it has to do with water. It has a calming, I hope, effect on the viewers. And you can see also several more Japanese references that have to do with sand. And this is the mock-up for the pole. But this is the basis of the language system and the patterns that one of the graduates has designed. So I'd like to introduce you 2 or 3 slides of Ripple. That is the name of the project that is now taking place remote in 2 different countries. And this is the beginning of the language that is being incorporated and tested on a very large television screen. Tom, one of the Israeli designers, has worked on this language. I cannot show you all of the communication patterns because we're still developing them and we don't have time, but I think that it is really important to note that it is still the same language developed in 10 days in Tokyo. And it has to do with water, it has to do with something that feels more natural, more intuitive, even though it's very minimalistic in the way that it moves around. So this is a smaller television set that is used for as a set, and we're now trying to deal with the feelings of one passenger onboarding on his or her own to an autonomous bus, and what kind of expression of welcome, what kind of interactions, what kind of visualization he or she would like to receive. So there's mock-up train in Tokyo right now, and this little booth is operating for tests, but we hope to install this television system in a Navia bus, in both one of the Navia buses here in Tel Aviv and in Tokyo in the following weeks, and to try to see how communication can take place and what can we learn about trust building, trust breaking, trust calibration from this experiment. So we have 3 types of demos right now. The ripples, an indication of the bus intent, the data viz circle that has to do both with the weather, the payment in case you forget to pay, and holds information about the ride. And finally, maybe also atmosphere, that the ripples can look a bit more like raindrops, or if there's a heat wave, the bus could also convey that, but we don't know because we haven't started with the experiment yet, but the language is built, the first interaction are already in place, and we'll start with more tests in the next few weeks. And I think I will stop here. Thank you.
That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Romy. That was brilliant. I particularly liked, I guess, the presentation of how prototyping progresses, and how in such a short space of time that prototyping can progress, and actually sort of already draw out some of those initial kind of insights and thoughts and how they might materialize, that you've then translated into more fully fledged research questions and more in-depth projects. So that progression from a really rapid kind of hackathon-like 10-day event, it's really intense workshops, and how how that went from interviews with experts, understanding from a passenger's point of view what it's like to engage in this sort of technology-enabled experience, to actually questioning how might we use the physicality of the bus to communicate to us in new ways. I think you drew out really well, and again positioning that in the context of developing more in-depth research projects and questions, I thought was an excellent illustration. There's one question already been put up into the chat, which was about the hackathons in.
I just need to say, I need to give the credits, and I haven't done it before. So Yuri Klebanov that I mentioned, Tom Reznikov, and also Professor Suda from Tokyo University also took a very important part in developing this system, and there are many others working on it, but I want to mention this. And as for the slide that I've added, it was a last-minute addition because I knew that you'll be interested in that. So I'm sorry for not translating it into English in time, but it is really important to see this magic from idea to product, and how prototyping, even if it's just a sketch, is useful for experimenting with an idea and enabling it to grow.
Yeah,
so yes, the question.
I thought that was great. Jumping to the other project in the desert, Catch Release has posted a question in the chat, which is just about actually, how do you fund these things? How do you manage to make it a sort of sustainable initiative? How is it funded?
Okay, so I'll have to say, I know this is recorded, but this program that I run is a bit crazy. And we do crazy things. We only take about $100, 400 shekels from our students. So we subsidize it. So first of all, it's a course. And it's a course that the program is offering. And I have to say that part of my responsibility to my students is to enable them this kind of adventure. And I do a lot of funding efforts. And it is technically funded by other courses that we have sponsors for. So we have partners from industry joining us in other courses, and this is how we fund this course. And of course, sometimes we get also funding from the public sector, because we're usually working on themes that have to do with agriculture, sustainability, design science relationship. This was the most experimental, the speculative design, but yeah, it's difficult. And this year we're planning. This last year we couldn't go anywhere, of course, because of lockdowns. This year I'm not taking the entire program to the desert, but we're staying in Jerusalem, and it's going to be without any sleep. It's too complicated now to program those things. So it will be a bit of a different format, and I hope I can tell you in 2 months that it was successful.
Yeah, I mean they're all.
You're on mute, Nick.
Yeah, they're all. They're all experiments and prototypes at different levels, aren't they? So I guess what part of what you're doing is always prototyping the environments that enable meaningful design to take place. Your students are engaging in design activities within that context. So yeah, I mean it's all an ongoing prototyping process. Brogan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'd say less of a question, and I'd like to play devil's advocate for a minute. So one of my sort of critiques of technology-led innovation, it's from Yuval Noah Harari, another academic working in Israel. And his work in Sapiens, what he talks about was the agricultural revolution, and how we essentially, as we transitioned from hunter-gatherers to agriculture, to domesticated creatures, we sort of went down this rabbit hole of trying to improve our lives by better agricultural practices. But over time, we sort of lost a lot of our quality of life from that other way of living. And I sort of see technology as possibly similar in a way. We're going down a rabbit hole with technology, and we're actually losing a lot of our humanity by doing it. And an interesting thing about the bus project was this idea of humanizing technology. But what wasn't considered, or what wasn't mentioned that was considered, was using the actual humans that were on board the bus to sort of humanize technology, something to do with the interactions. And also, what happens with the bus driver sort of thing? Like, is it actually causing more problems further down the line? Is that something that is part of the speculative designers thinking about the negative consequences of the technology as well? I just thought I'd like to get your response on that critique.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for that. Those are very meaningful questions that I think we should keep in mind. As I would say, designers and people with design mindsets, sometimes there is over enthusiasm in bringing the new into the old world, and in implementing new technologies, we all sometimes forget about their consequences. So I think that one of the main things we need to keep in mind, and I will relate to your reference to Yuval Noah Harari, that I think that as a historian, Yuval Noah Harari tends to give very general descriptions with large brush strokes. And we're now in a transition moment. We're experiencing this change, and we know that humanity is changing, and we know that interaction is already being mediated by screen, by technology, and we know that AI is already in place. So I don't think that this transition took as long as this move from hunter-gatherers community to the agricultural community that he described. And I don't think that we're being colonized by technology. I think that it is that the important thing is to make it more humane, and also remember that there were so many different interests in inventing technology, and that it is a tool. It is yet another tool. So one of the things that we should keep in mind is that we have less time now to plan, less time to get ready and understand and think critically about those changes. And I've thought about Buckminster Fuller this morning, and about intuitive probes, and the fact that designers, artists, and I will say people with critical thinking, critical mindset coming from the liberal arts, there is a very important thing about planning a different future, planning different uses of the given technology, even if it's not ready yet. Even if technology is not available to us yet, we should think about our needs and our fears and our anxieties and try to accommodate them. So I live in Israel. It's a very, it's a place that is very enthusiastic about cyber and everything high tech. On the other hand, this place is part of the reason why it's crazy is because of the weight of history and tradition, and those things here bring to great extremism. It brings to radical thinking, and it's very complicated. I'm not sure that I have the breadth and even maybe not the capacity to think about it as an historian, as Yuval Noah Harari may have. But I really think that as an educator, as someone that works in the education sector, it is my responsibility to look at the influences on humanity, on the implications, on the consequences. And when you asked about the bus driver, I don't think that the bus driver will be eliminated tomorrow. But I do think that in a few years, we will also see autonomous vehicles around us. We will see transportation that is led by humans side by side to transportation that is led by non-human forces. And this is the interesting transition. This is, I think, the responsibility of designers that can actually understand and map different stakeholders and try to take into account not only paying customers, but also people that walk in the street and don't understand how this bus is moving around, or passengers that never thought that they would have a robot take them from place to place. And this is what the team is trying to accommodate. So I'm not sure that I answered your question, but I really think that there's an enormous responsibility for people that are not only looking at the profit and on the bottom line of of the owners, but also thinking about the well-being of the society. And I think that being idealistic is really important in an age that is so fascinated with the advancement of technology.
That's fantastic. Thank you very, very much,
Thank you.
Romy. What a stimulating presentation and a terrific set of examples. So thank you so much for your contribution. If anybody does have any remaining questions, please pop them into the chat and we'll try and pick them up offline. I'll just take over the slides and bring the seminar to a close in the last few minutes. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to highlight to you all is a number of initiatives that I've been starting to gather from across the globe that are really located in design schools, but are absolutely socially focused masters programs and undergraduate initiatives. So last month I highlighted the work of the University of Illinois and their Design for Responsible Innovation Masters. They'll be speaking to us on the 21st of May in the seminar series, so that's really exciting. But there are a whole range of others. So the Design for Social Innovation program at the School of Visual Arts in New York. The D School doesn't quite do as much in this space as it might, but it does have a minor that's designed for social systems, which is quite interesting. The work at Art Center in Pasadena is really fascinating, and I would encourage you to have a look at the range of initiatives that they've got going on. All of these different programs that I'm highlighting now, I'm aiming to speak to the lead practitioners and academics on those courses over the next couple of months. So as I do that, I'll be inviting them to speak into this seminar series, and hopefully we'll hear from them directly. In the UK, there's also Ravensbourne University, Goldsmiths and Kingston that are doing some interesting work in this space. And I had the privilege to speak to the lead academic at the OCDA University in Toronto that has a social innovation, a design-focused social innovation program. And actually, they mentioned Bezalel and that they had a period of time, a sort of an exchange with you, and they knew of you, so that was nice as well. But I'll be inviting them to speak in the coming months as well. And the last slide on this is just some other interesting initiatives that I've come across in Brussels, Paris, Milan, and Berlin. And again, a lot of these academics I've had the opportunity to speak to, and they're going to engage in this seminar series. It'll also be really interesting to look at how these different programs are engaging their students with the outside world for positive social impact. And I'll be working with these academics to draw out the different models that we see in play at the moment, and what the variety is across different design schools on that. But these are all quite fascinating initiatives, I think, anyway. Last thing just to draw your attention to is that there's quite an interesting publication from Gilbert Bernau. Again, I'm not very good at pronouncing surnames, but you can follow this link. It's the work is presented in both German and in English. And it's a really interesting piece of work around design thinking for social innovation, and it relates to some of Gilbert's work working with refugees in refugee camps. So there's some really fascinating content there. Next month we have some professional practitioners speaking in the seminar. We have a practitioner at a UK charity called Citizen. They've worked at a number of charities as a lead innovator. and they will be speaking about innovation in the kind of the charity sector and the third sector, and some of the challenges that they face in bringing quite traditional organizations to engage with social innovation. We also have a storyteller and a professional filmmaker who's going to speak at the seminar as well. So I'll confirm the time. It might be 10 o'clock Central European time. I'll confirm this in due course and make sure that you all get